Now, yeah, time it so we know exactly when the 6 minutes is up and everything.
Okay, it's at 14:20 right now.
Get the cheese.
Well, we can just not put it on. I mean, yeah, we can cut, in the edges.
Here we are. Oh, it's on. Well,
This part probably won't even be on there.
better not.
We can talk about Joe Biden. You can talk about yourself. What do we want to know about bears? That'd be a good one.
No, you don't.
No. I'm going to try to explain what we see.
Well, it's fall. It's kind of heading into summer and heading into fall. What are some of the fall activities you'd like to do? You guys like to go orchid picking?
No,
No?
No.
try something else.
Do you like looking for worms under rocks? I don't know. What do you do in the fall that's different from the rest of the year? Anything?
No, I don't do much of anything.
No, nothing here. But you must have something because you would have asked the question.
We usually go for rides in the countryside and look at the foliage and stuff like that.
You mean day after day?
No, not day after day because we're busy. In fact, I read in a book last night there are only three things in life. You have to have something to do, someone to love, and something to look forward to.
Something to look forward to, someone to love, and
Something to do.
Right. So that's
it. That's
past,
all
present, and
That's
future.
all you have to have in life. What do you think of that?
I think that'll work.
I think it's great.
That reminds me. Do you go to church regularly,
Not at all.
Don?
Do I? No, not at all for the last couple of years.
So it'd be fair to say neither of you are believers.
No.
Yeah, and what? That's right. And what?
I believe you know what I mean when I use the word believer.
Believers?
I think that's probably true.
What you mean? Believe in a God or something like that? Or
All right, let's start with that.
I believe in a God, but I don't believe in a church or related God.
You don't believe that the church is sort of a gatekeeper to the God?
No. Church is a means for punishing people to make them think that punishment will make you better.
Here on earth.
Yeah, here on earth, and it just doesn't. That doesn't appeal to me at all.
How can you be so sure?
How can I be so sure? I don't have to be so sure. Well, I mean, I have to be so sure. Remember, I had this operation, and for 10 minutes, I was legally dead, and I don't remember a thing. I went to sleep, and I woke up, and there was nothing in between. And frankly, that's how I think it's going to be. You die, and that's it. You die and be done with it.
But the Creator knew that you were not dead, and
But there is no life.
was bringing you back.
I don't think there's any life after death and any of that kind of stuff. I think that's a nice way for the churches to hold this fear over people. If you don't do it right here, well, you're going to be punished there. And it's the same kind of thing we can use in our society all the time. If you don't do it right, you're going to be published. Well, why don't you just do it right and not worry about where you're going to be punished? People don't do it out of fear. People don't go to work out of fear. People don't not steal out of fear. They just don't ever think of it. It's not something that really appeals to them or they want to do. It's not out of fear. It's not out of punishment.
Would you say the church has lost that battle? There's not enough people that...
No, I think when you look at the religious right, these people are up to their eyeballs in this.
Well, but I mean, that's a segment of society, but it's not as... I was listening to a medievalist professor the other day.
How old was he?
Ooh, oh my. 600 years old. And he pointed out that he was talking about 14th century England, and that the church used confession as a means of social control.
Sure.
Because that meant that in every village, at least one person, namely the priest, knew what was going on and had the means to control it. So because you had to come in and confess your sins, so you had to tell him. And by the means of your confession, you brought up in your own consciousness the things you knew you were doing wrong, and therefore you had to once again commit yourself to doing what was right. And of course, the church was interested in you doing things like they were interested in keeping the established order, which meant things like be happy where you are because your future will be very happy. Be happy with your state, so that in fact medieval England was divided up into 3 estates, and you had the first, and you had the aristocracy, and then you had the church. And if everybody would just be happy with their state, everything would be fine. And unfortunately, there was this peasants' revolt where the peasants, this period of time, thought
They weren't very happy.
they weren't very happy, and their problem was they weren't very happy.
That's right.
All they had to do was to think about it and then be happy. So the church was a very powerful means of social control. But I don't think that's true today.
You? No. You know,
Not enough people believe. If we would all believe, then we'd be back to social control.
and I have to admit that since childhood, ever since the very beginning, I've always thought it doesn't make sense. Christianity is, and I went to the Methodist Church and then I went to the Episcopal Church, but even as a child, it didn't add up. I mean, I thought the biblical stories were wonderful, and I loved reading them, and I could get excited by it. I loved Billy Graham. I loved listening to Billy Graham. I thought that was a great speaker.
This is when you were 10 years old.
And later,
Oh.
you know, just like I would enjoy listening to Rush Limbaugh now, but I didn't believe what I was hearing.
Well, I wanted to see where physically all of these Bible stories took place. I mean, that was very interesting to think that this is not just a matter of fairy tales. I mean, there was an actual physical place where this took place. So I wanted to go see, and that was certainly fascinating to see. And by the way, I think it's wonderful that part of our Christian tradition does not require us to take physical control of these so-called holy places, because obviously that would set up a 3-way eternal battle for land. Thank goodness we had this concept, and at least the Catholic Church had the concept of the holy city is something up above, and so it's not necessary that we actually have Jerusalem. They got off the route a little bit during the Crusades, but got back to the idea. Anyway, it was a fascinating thing, but it in no means made my faith deeper. It was just, this is very interesting.
Religion has dominated the world. It screws up the world. Like, we're all biologically pretty much the same. And yet people get into this fundamental belief, my religion is the only religion, and your religion is, I can't tolerate your religion, therefore I have to be against you. And this is just crazy to me. I mean, if there is a God, why would he or she be into all this kind of stuff? It doesn't make any sense. We live in a multicultural society. We ought to, and everybody has a stomach, and everybody has eyes, and assuming that they're normal. Why is it that we have to go through this ridiculousness of religion determining our political views towards other people? And all the wars we fight over. Look at all the stuff, the Taliban, all the fanatical. Forget all this stuff. We're all just human beings living on this planet for however long, and frankly, it may not be much longer.
Well,
that's why religion has not added one iota of anything.
And I assume, by the way, that your little casual comment about how much longer refers to 3 or 4 millenniums.
About 74 million years.
Okay.
No, exactly. But I mean, if the scientists are right, that the planet comes and goes and all this
Oh yeah.
stuff. So we're just running around here creating. So it's like we're It's something to do.
And I'd like something to look forward to.
Well, see.
And you're kind of raining on my parade.
Well.
Because I was looking forward to
Well.
the holy city of
Well.
Jerusalem.
It isn't anybody. It's all over. This is it. Their backyard is it. Enjoy it.
You know, the reason you say that, so we're all human beings, but maybe that just simply means that we're all animals, and therefore this notion of dividing up is, in fact, a tribal impulse that all animals have, and that's the reason that we can't help ourselves. We band together based upon what our eyes tell us, so that our white skin tells us that we're the same, and anybody that doesn't have white skin is different. And even though I don't want to think that,
Right.
I feel any closer to you because of that, my mind tells me that, but my primordial urge is to band together.
And to the one that I look similar to. It could be that. I don't know what those things are. Granted, my values in life probably come from the religious doctrine that was transmitted into the codified into laws in this country. You know, don't kill, don't steal, don't have adultery, that kind of stuff. I don't doubt that at all. But I think they could have come up with that without religion. Society would be rather chaotic because they're primitive tribes that have those kinds of rules, and they don't have necessarily a religion like ours. I mean, it just helps things to function better.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in life would get rather chaotic, and then you get do that.
By the way, those primitive tribes would have been a lot better if they found Christ a long time ago.
Turn this thing off. We're going to get in all kinds of trouble here.
Is this a 20-minute tape that automatically ends after 6 minutes?
You've been strangely quiet here.
No, I mean, I'm trying to think. I'm really in agreement that it doesn't. I think I would be a good person, as I understand it, within the world I live in. Religion doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
It really doesn't at all. I mean, I think we should treat each other in a way that I believe in, advancement of humanity and each other, but I don't. It's not a connection for me between religion and that. I'm not doing it to avoid going to hell or something like that. And I think I went for a long time to the Episcopal Church, and I know you have long involvement, and one of the criticisms of it, of course, is they've moved away from any of the literal interpretations or the traditional way, and I don't know whether they formally believe that you're going to purgatory or what happens, but anyway, none of that motivates me. But I'm aware, the difficulty is I live in this wonderful place, Now I'll think sometimes, okay, well, what if you really lived in Sub-Sahara region or something? You were,
good point.
enslaved and eating sand, and just the whole thing.
Well, yeah.
How would you look at things? Probably religion. I doubt if religion has any real importance even there. It becomes survival, one group over another.
Speaking of a wonderful place, I still see the deer running around over there. He's
feasting on some food?
Yes, well, the lush grass, which he doesn't understand is heavily toxic because of all of the fertilizer we put on it to make it lush. But
You could become a bionic deer. Oh dear.
Well, I've always thought that God has a sense of humor, and so I think that in my next life, which, by the way, I think
You think you're going to have a next life?
well, I won't be aware of it, but my molecules, my little subatomic particles, will all come back together. Well, actually, no, they won't. But they'll all become a part of all kinds of other things. Anyway, because he or she has a sense of humor, this has been a wonderful life, living in the wealthiest country, living in the wealthiest city, living in being in the top 0.1% of the world population. So next time I will, I'm sure, be a blind 9-year-old Guatemalan girl who...
You hear that down there in Guatemala?
Yeah, but you see, your karma may be such that this is like the next to the ultimate step, and it's actually going to be more wonderful the next time around.
Yeah, and that's in the unlikely event that religion got it right.
Do you remember your past lives at all?
No, I do not.
Yeah,
I do not. Does your wife remember her past
no.
lives?
Who freaking cares?
Well,
This part definitely has to be trimmed out. Then. Of course, she doesn't watch.
You can make anything up you want. You can say anything, and there are lots of people who will follow you and do anything that you say. I mean, there are just people who are that way. Even people who have a great deal of education, they'll get hooked onto these kinds of things. I've seen very bright people go into this past life stuff and all this. Fine, if that's comforting to them, fine.
and it's something to look forward to.
If they want to look forward to it, fine. I don't have any. Everybody does what they kind of need to do, but no, I don't want them stealing from me or beating up my wife or myself or anything like that. But do I have a lot of control over that? I can take preventive measures that may retard that, but I can't ultimately stop that if that's what their intention is. What can I possibly? I'm not going to have a gun in my house. I mean, it's that kind of negative thinking, I think, produces that. You begin to see the world that everybody's out to get you. Everything is a struggle. And then granted, I'm very lucky to be living where I live and have the opportunities that I've had, but I had nothing to do with it. I was just born to these parents, and this is what they did. Did I have a say in it? Do I have anything memory before that? No. Do I regret it? No. And I'm not being totally without the belief that there may be a higher force, because in Al-Anon, I think that's very important, and I believe in that, a power greater than ourselves. And it does affect some of the things that happened to me. I have no, why did this happen? And I've been very lucky to be alive, so that must be a force greater than myself.
Yeah. Well,
So I agree with
force
that.
greater than ourselves. For overarching all of this conversation, there's an asteroid out there that has our number on it.
But how do we get a moral compass?
How did you get your moral?
Well, I'm just saying, just in general, why don't we decide, as has been decided at various times in the past, that we're going to castrate all people with who seem to be retarded, that they shouldn't be allowed to have any children, and by the way, we'll include a few other groups because that's not really, they're not benefiting society, and so we're not going to make it possible for them to
Well,
procreate.
indeed, in the past, we also castrated simply young boys who had a wonderful voice.
Mm-hmm.
They were, wasn't because they
So
were autistic.
How did we come to decide that wasn't a good thing to do and not right? So to do that, or how do we go on from here and say, well, gee, the world requires only people who are of a certain intellect and who can be a part of this advanced age that we're now living in, and anyone else really isn't helpful. We just end up having to support them. See, there's scarcity in the world, you could argue. For example, you look at the population and say, well, we don't need 330 million, let alone 400 million people. We're going on and on.
And we certainly don't need them all to be able to vote.
That's right. Yeah, that can be decided because, after all, one group has the truth as to how people ought to live, and it should be only those people with certain abilities and wealth, for example. So you could have a revolution. The people who are on the short side can fight back, but still, in terms of the moral compass, now, religion provided that. Christianity, even though it was always hypocritical, of course, it wasn't consistently applied. Where does this moral compass come from? Who says it's better to treat all people well? Why should we do that?
Well, maybe once again it's Darwinian. It's that we think we've seen in our genes that that's the best.
And even though the insects actually are in control of the world, isn't any more than we haven't succeeded in humbling them. So still, I think most of us feel like we're the stewards of the world. Women, humans are. We are here. We are taking care of the world. We're either making it terrible or we're making it better. It's an illusion, probably, because the insects still winning, but or the microbes are still ahead. But anyway,
We take care of one of them right there.
yeah.
There's a loser there. I think that's a very good point. But I think that I think in the future, you're going to find we can't afford to have wars anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They're just going to say, well, this is just too expensive. Like, we can't afford to do this. It doesn't make any sense to do this. No matter what way you just can't do it.
Or we can, and you know what we'll do? We'll just provide chemicals that will allow our soldiers to fight for 72 hours at a stretch. And we can have fewer. We don't have to have so many, and we can have automated. That's the way it's kind of gone. And we'll provide Prozac for people so they don't really mind doing all the killing.
Maybe Hobbes is right then. Everything you're still in fear all the time. And you need government.
I talked to a fellow who was in the first Gulf War, and I don't know a lot about the person, but anyway, we were talking about things. And he said, I was a soldier, the fellow said, and I didn't see much combat in the first Gulf War, because there wasn't much combat. There was Hail Mary pass. But one day, the Iraqis were down in the trenches, and it looked like the unit was going to have to go hand to hand to get them. But the commander of the unit said, no, I'm not going to risk my people. I'll call in some kind of a plane that has the Gatling guns and fires a bullet every square foot. And we did that. And then he called in bulldozers and buried them all in the trenches alive. And there was an effort to bring him up on war crimes, which didn't succeed. The man, whoever the officer was.
Now, see, there's an oxymoron, isn't it? War crimes.
Mm-hmm. Military intelligence.
Didn't kill him in the right way.
Yeah, military intelligence.
But this person was very troubled by this.
Yeah, and really,
If this was done this way, and if we could have took those bulldozers and did that. Didn't resort in my conversation to saying this is opposes Christianity or anything like that. I had no idea what religious belief the person had, if any.
Go ahead. Do you realize in our lifetime we've been alive for the Second World War, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and now this war in Iraq? We've virtually lived our entire life with one war after another. And while we sit here in this country without any war going on, it's like, this is almost crazy, this idea of war. The guys went over thousands of men went over and fought in the Pacific, and then, they came back to these islands. They're one island at a time. We just can't get to Japan until we get there. We have to slaughter all these Germans, and the Germans can slaughter. What the heck for? Has it really ever proved anything? Are his life really any better? Was Hitler this maniacal person? What was all this stuff going on? And now where are we? Are we going to this war in Iraq? Well, we'll bring up another one. Maybe it'll be in South America someplace.
Like the Russians in Georgia.
Like the Russians in Georgia. I mean, it seems like this war stuff is just something that perpetuates itself. And you've got a military that exists to fight wars, so you got to have wars. Well,
and if we make all the armament, who are we going to sell it to?
Yeah,
we can't have a war. You can't lose all those bombs and guns.
They say, well, gee, you mean you think that Hitler would have been fine? No, Hitler wouldn't have been fine, but on the other hand, maybe Hitler would have all come apart anyway. Who's to say that it wouldn't have fallen apart anyway from the inside?
By using entertainment policies we did against them.
Yeah. Now, I was certainly not in favor of the concentration camps and all that. That was unspeakable, but was that worse than the Battle of the Bulge? And check the camera.
Next week, sex among the elderly.